Hi everyone, today we're going to take a look at a new lens from Viltrox for Sony E-mount full frame cameras. It's their 28mm f4.5 autofocus pancake lens. Now full disclosure, Viltrox did send this lens out to me at no cost to myself, but I'm not being paid to do this review. They're not seeing it before I publish this video, and of course I'll give you my honest and fair opinion. This is the smallest full frame autofocus lens I've ever seen. I mean, just look how thin that is. I mean, it weighs about 60 grams, and technically it's 15.3 millimeters in thickness. That includes the mount. So when it's mounted on the camera, it only stands off the body about a centimeter. And again, this is full frame. It's worth repeating. On top of that, they're only asking $99 for this lens. Now, I've had this lens for less than a week, so I haven't had much time to take it out because it's just been raining every day. So I got some shots in the backyard of my dog Ellie, and I took it out last night to National Harbor, and I got a few street photography shots and architectural type photography. And I can tell you, so far, I'm pretty impressed. I mean, it's relatively sharp, the autofocus worked well, and I was really happy with the images that I got from it. Personally, I love the 28mm focal length for doing street photography, architectural photography, and even for portraits. And I'm showing a few images here that I took, not necessarily with this lens, but at 28mm, just to give you a feel of the field of view. And of course, it's great for doing landscapes and seascapes. And I'm really surprised more manufacturers aren't making 28mm primes. Now, being a full-frame lens, of course you can use this on an APS-C camera like the Sony a6600 or the 6700. And it'll give you about a 42mm field of view, which is actually becoming very popular these days. I'm seeing a lot of lenses come out like in the 40mm focal length because it's a little bit wider than, say, the nifty 50 or the standard 50mm, but not quite as wide as the 35mm. And I think a lot of photographers are finding that feels just about right. It's kind of a sweet spot. And it's, again, very popular in street photography and your standard portrait type photography. It's really a great focal length, and it's actually quickly becoming one of my favorite focal lengths as well. This lens has an aperture of f4.5, so you can use this in modest lighting. I mean, it's not a super low light lens like an f1.8, but it's not bad. And at close distances, you can get a reasonable shallow depth of field. The autofocus areas are very smooth, and the transition from what's in focus to autofocus seem just fine. And overall, I'm pretty happy with the color and the rendering that this lens produces. Now let's take a closer look at the lens itself. Now the barrel, such as it is made of plastic, but I think the design is actually quite handsome. It's a good looking lens. Now what's interesting is here in the front, you actually have a lens cap built in, and you just slide this lever back and forth to protect the lens or to open the lens. Now in the rear we have a metal lens mount, and this is made of aluminum, so it's durable yet lightweight. And then we have the electrical contacts here to transfer the autofocus and EXIF information. And then finally, we have a USB-C port here to update the firmware. So overall, I think we have a good looking, well-made lens, especially at this price point of $99. Now, as you would expect, to make a lens this small, there's going to be some compromises. So first one is there's no way to manually focus this lens. There's no manual focus ring. And of course, there's no aperture ring. There's no function buttons. You can't put a lens hood on it, and there's no filter ring, so you can't put any filters on it. And it's not weather sealed. But I think the biggest compromise overall in all of these specs that we've talked about so far is that the aperture is fixed at 4.5. So I can't like raise it up to like f8 or f11 if I want to get even a deeper depth of field. Now optically speaking, I think at this price point the lens performance is very good. I mean, it's relatively sharp in the center, and it's not terrible as you go out into the corners. Chromatic aberration is virtually non-existent. And there's also virtually no distortion, so you get straight lines and a very clean rectilinear image. As I said before, when you make a lens this compact, there's going to be some compromises, and that means optically as well. And the first thing I noticed in my limited testing here is that the lens does have lower contrast, say, than my kit lens. Also, there is some vignetting. I measured about one stop from the center out to the corners. But that vignetting is very, very smooth. You wouldn't really notice it unless you're shooting, say, like a brick wall. So the vignetting doesn't fall off really hard in the corners. It's very, very gradual. Also, the lens has a flaring problem because you can't put any lens hood on it. If you're shooting, say, in direct sunlight, or if the light source is just even a little bit out of frame, you're going to get some flaring on the lens. And I was able to mitigate some of that by just putting my hand up over and blocking the light source, but you can't always do that, right? Especially if you're recording video. So when you're panning around and a very hard light source like the sun comes into the frame, you will get a little bit of ghosting and flaring, which essentially, reduces the contrast and creates weird artifacts in the image. Now, if you like to edit your images as much as I do, whether it's the raw files or maybe you're applying art filters for Instagram, etc., these minor optical flaws are easily corrected, like especially contrast and vignetting and chromatic aberrations. Those are really non-issues anymore and shouldn't be deal breakers at all, especially that it's relatively minor on this lens, especially if you're shooting on an APS-C camera like a Sony a6700. You're not going to see any vignetting or softness in the corners like you would on a full frame. Now for video, the lens also performed perfectly fine. The autofocus was able to keep up with the kind of normal things that I would record, talking headshots or vlogging and walking back and forth. The autofocus didn't have any problems. Now I did notice some focus breathing on the lens where if you're racking focus, say from something close to something far away in the frame, the field of view will change slightly, which can be distracting, especially for professional video work. But if you're just doing the occasional video clip, you'll be fine. Now with all that said, I think all the compromises I've mentioned here should not be deal breakers on a lens like this, specifically because it's 28 millimeters. I mean, you're not going to be shooting birds in flight or sports action type photography. This is primarily going to be used for like street photography or at events and capturing those happy moments in your life. So for something like that, this is perfect. And being so small, compact, and lightweight, really, you ever heard the saying, the best camera is the one you have with you? I think that should extend the lenses because this lens really makes your camera very easy to take along with you anywhere. Oh, and before I forget, one thing that pleasantly surprised me were the starbursts that I got from this lens. So when you're taking pictures at night and you have speculars in the background or points or very bright points of light, they're going to burst into like streaks of light, which are really cool, I think. And I always love to get that effect. And the fact that this can do that at f4.5 was awesome. So overall, I really like this lens. I mean, think about it. There's really nothing else like this on the market right now. I mean, it's ultra compact, it's lightweight, it's 60 grams, it has autofocus, has decent optical performance, and it's only $99. So if you're interested in a lens like this and you'd like some more information, I'll have links down below to the manufacturer that you can check out. But that's all I have for today. I hope you enjoyed this little preview. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you again soon.